Bill, how are you guys? How are you doing? Um, Amber Rose, the Black Church loves you. Holler at the Cyclopses, Earth, Wind, Fire Spirit in the building. Adiak and Tani, the Spice Man, our sponsor. I'd like to just say thank you to everybody who's been hanging out with the channel. Shiloh in the building, stand up. And LMS, baby, come on now. Let's do our thing. Let's do our thing. Let's keep creating. Let's keep doing what we're supposed to be doing. This channel is still doing what it's supposed to be doing. Batgirl in the back end and everybody doing everything on the front end. Come on. Listen, Amber Rose, the Black Church still loves you. Now, for those of us who haven't seen or heard about these comments, um, Amber Rose, had some very choice things to say about the Black Church, and like her basically her concept is not, it's not new. It's something we've heard many times before, so I thought it was worthy of me coming on here and mentioning it. What I will not do is I will not drag Amber Rose. Um, I'm not going to use the opposite of Christian behavior that we normally do when we're trying to defend the faith and try to attack people, especially our own people. I'm not going to do that with Amber because Amber doesn't need that. Amber needs empathy. She needs the love of Christ. Um, and we have to now be better because the church is under such scrutiny from within. Every great empire crumbles from within first. That we do not have the levity to simply throw stones from the pew or the pulpit at people who criticize the church. So this is Amber's, and this is not Amber's thought. This is a thought that is pervasive in the Black community, and therefore it's a very important thing to bring to the table today. Um, it is that the slave master, this is where she picks up her, let me pick up her proverb from here. The slave master basically taught the slave, gave the slave Christianity. And so therefore the Black church is really just the product, the byproduct of colonial slave masters teaching and indoctrinating their slaves with an ideology that kept them docile, kept them in servitude, and ensures that when they do feel that they have some level of injustice or a true complaint, they won't really respond that harshly, right? And so I'm helping her argument, to be honest with you. She didn't even go that far. But her argument was simply that the slave master has taught um, those people who were enslaved to be slaves via Christianity, and therefore Christianity is basically the tool of a slave master, and a very good tool, because it has kept the anger and the revenge factor of the Black person in America quenched. Now, there's so much we can say about this. Please say hello to me as you come in. Please join the page. Think about becoming a member. Check out our merch. Lots of things going on with Shiloh and with the Real Spiel and myself. So would love your support. Please stay with us and keep with us. Thank you very much for coming on here this morning. There's a lot to say about that. Number one, um, let's talk about this is the easy part for me. Let's talk about the historical context of Christianity in respect to the European. Let's begin right there. And our best example of Europe in a macrocosm, Europe in a macrocosm, excuse me, on an empire bit level, Europe is personified first and foremost by the Roman Empire. The ancient Roman Empire is the personification of Europe. Europe, Latins, let's say it like that, okay? So European Latin experience, culture, is typified by the Roman Empire. Um, we know this historically. We can also derive this from the Latin languages that come, sorry, the languages that come from the Latin language: Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, and we can go on into, again, expanding that into the Germanic languages, the Germanic and Slavic languages, of which we have Britain, we have Germany, potentially Swedish. We have the Scots and the Irish, and we can extend it on to the Norway and all these, the Vikings and all these other individuals, even as far as Russia, Ukraine, and all these other countries. Now we have this extension, this Eurasian extension of what it means to be both European, and what it means to be the founding fathers of African colonization. Right? Let's use them as that. The Netherlands, we have the Belgians, of course, and all the other ones that I mentioned. And we have these countries now that have sought to take Africans out of Africa and to bring them to the West, to the New World, and to utilize them as labor forces for the prosperity of individuals and nations alike. Now, what takes place, we know, is that this Christianity that is attached to these nations is of course skewed and is utilized by both the colonizer and in his mindset to civilize the savages and give those savages his religion. And that's wonderful, and that's contextual, and that cannot be ignored, and that happened. That absolutely happened. But the mistake that Amber Rose is making, and the mistake that many Black people make, and the mistake that white people make, is that Black history doesn't start with slavery. That's the mistake. Christian history, in respect to Black people, doesn't start with slavery. The beginning of the Black historical experience is not 1619 on Plymouth Rock on. The Black experience with Christianity and Black history in general predates this place called the United States of America. It predates colonization. It predates European civilization and Germanic civilization. It predates it. It does. It predates it. The Judeo-Christian experience, and speaking from a Hebrew Israelite experience, predates the relevance of a European nation at all. Before Rome, there was Abraham. Before Grecia, there was Jacob. And so we have a religious historicity specific to our ethnicity that far outdates any empire of European, any colonizer's stake in the religion of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We are so far removed as individuals who were given a religion from the sun is from the earth. Let's talk about history now. Christianity, as we know it, arrives in the context of Jewish reform. What What is Christianity? Christianity, in its base, most purest sense, is Reformed Judaism. In its most base sense, that's what it is supposed to have been. It is supposed to be a Reformed Judaism. So therefore, if Christianity is Reformed Judaism, Judaism predates the Roman Empire, predates the Grecian Empire, predates the Ottoman Empire, predates the Islam and the Muslim move to take over the world. It predates all these things. And so specifying now and jumping into just pure Christianity, Christianity does take its root in the first century. Its begins with Augustus, and its high point end with a couple of Caesars, or not end, but crescendo in respect to where we find our writings. It crescendos in the writings with emperors like Nero, and then it takes flight through the empire, through Constantine, and after, right? So prior to colonization, moving from the first century all the way to the 4th century of Constantine, that's 325 AD of the Nicene Creed, which makes it the 4th century. In Christianity's first 400 years, Christianity was being developed in the East, meaning Africa, referred to as Alexandria. It was being developed in the West, speaking of Rome. It was being developed in Asia, speaking of Constantinople, where the Byzantine Empire's headquarters was moved because there was a fear of the Ottoman engagement. And so Constantine realized that the best place to set up shop for his empire was not to be in Europe, but to be in Constantinople, modern-day Turkey. Christianity was in Jerusalem. Christianity was in Antioch. And those were considered the patriarch places and locations of Christianity, but none so impressive and scholarly as the Christianity that takes place in Alexandria, which is Africa, modern day Egypt. Christianity forms its nuances of scholastic thought in the East. Yes, the Roman Catholic at this time is angry a little bit at me, but he knows I'm right. He knows I'm right for those who are historians, to those who understand the error of Ambrose's statements. He knows I'm right because when Christianity became a legal entity of the Byzantine Empire, the Nicene Creed, written by 300 bishops, mostly from Africa. So let's begin there. Let's even leave out that the ancient Jew, the first century Jew, was an Afro-Semitic Jew for the most part. Just leave out when you look into the book of Acts in Acts chapter 2, and it tells you where those Jews were coming from to worship, that most of those countries are African countries, or countries where Afro-Semitic and Afro-Hamitic people live. Let's leave out the book of Acts talking about the eunuch coming from Ethiopia who Philip converts. Let's leave that out. Let's leave all that out if you want to. Let's leave all the black presence that we see in the New Testament. Let's leave out Simon the Cyrenian. Let's leave him out. And his sons who became bishops in the church later that you don't know. Let's leave all that out. And let's just start with the fact that modern day, if you want to call it that, which really isn't, but modern day Christendom formed in the Orthodox, or I'll call it the Catholic Orthodox perspective. Catholic meaning universal, Orthodox meaning correct perspective. Does so under the watchful eye of African bishops formulating this thing called the Nicene Creed. None so powerful as a new bishop by the name of Athanasius, referred to as the Black Dwarf, a very short black man. He is so powerful about how Christianity is being formed that the emperor gives him a nickname, because the emperor, wanting the unification of one orthodoxy, meaning one type of Christianity, bringing these individuals together, is stuck with this black man who will not allow the liberal progressiveness that takes place almost immediately after Christianity is formed. And he calls this man, who is known as Athanasius. He says Athanasius contra mundum. Athanasius contra mundum. Athanasius against the world. That's what Constantine says of him. Athanasius contra mundum. Because he won't resist, he won't stop, he will not bow down to the nuances of change that the empire seems to want. When people try to take liberties with the faith, he says, no, it shall remain what we wrote in Nicaea in 325. It shall not be moved. Athanasius contra mundum. And I'll say it like this: black man against the world. Black man, that's what he was, against the world. I wish I could put that on a t-shirt. Black man contra mundum in Latin. The Latin speaker said this black man won't change his stance on what this faith is. This most holy faith, immovable, unimpeachable, sent by God. So, Amber, as we come down the annals of history, I want to let you know something. My daughter, I want to let you know that Christianity, in its incubator state, came out of the bosom of Africa. Did not the scripture say, when Joseph and Mary took this baby and hid from Herod in Africa, in Egypt, did not God say, so that the scripture could be fulfilled, my son, I have called out of Egypt. My son, I have called out of Africa. This is why they're so diligent about lying and trying to claim that Egypt is not Africa, that Egyptians are not Africans, that Egyptians are somehow they become Arabs. Because the decolorization of Christianity is amongst us. And so, Amber, what you are doing is you are fueling a false narrative. Because how can a white man, no disrespect to white people all over the place who love the Lord, how can you give me something that I gave to you? Let me say that again. You can't re-gift me Christianity when I gave it to you. Can't do that. You can't re-gift me a faith that when they went to Timbuktu in the libraries of Mali, they found Bibles. They found Bibles. You can't re-gift it to me. You can't give me something that I taught you. Did not the Jew, did not the ancient priest, Christian priest, develop this written context in order to train these wild Germanics, the faith? What did they develop to help them? These poor Germanics They wanted God, but they did not have enough intelligence to have a written language. So we helped them. We gave them an alphabet of 26 characters. We gave them a tongue that they could speak collectively. And we pulled from some of the aspects of culture all around us and allow them to quantify. We took some things from what they were saying and we sewed together a language for them and called it English. The English language, the written English language, the Germanic language called English was even given to them by us in order that we might be able to teach them the faith. Come on. They could never have given me what has always been mine. Let's go from there. Let's go into now colonization. So we go now down the road. We start from 325 AD and we head all the way to good old Christopher Columbus, that Italian boy who didn't know how to sail, sitting down there at the court of Isabella. There's an evil Spanish greedy woman who wanted more, giving this young fella some money and sending him on his way, hoping to find the spices of India, because we know that these folks didn't know how to season their food. No shade. But that's what they were looking for. They were looking for a spice route. Is not it interesting that the European explored based on his belly? He wasn't trying to find new worlds. He wasn't trying to gain information. He wasn't trying to meet new cultures. He wasn't trying to expand his destiny. He was trying to eat spicy meat. That's what he was doing. So Christopher Columbus was finding his way and a better way to get this pepper and this curry and this coriander. He was trying to find a way so that the queen in Spain could sit down and put garnishes on her food. That was the extent of their conquest. They were looking to fill their belly. But what did they find? They found lands populated by individuals. They found there was great riches in the western side of Africa because they saw these kings patrol their way all the way to Mecca and said, what is going on with these people? When they arrived, they realized they were civilized. They had language. When they had arithmetic. They had libraries. They knew how to sail. In fact, they had already been to the West hundreds of years before Columbus was even thought of in its grandfather's private parts. They were already circumnavigating the globe as the Phoenicians. They were already studying the stars and the astrology and astronomy. They already understood physics, Pythagorean theorems, and they were already people of renown. They understood disease control and purification of water. They weren't dying in Europe while the European didn't know how to wash his hands. How can you talk to us about a man giving us a Bible who doesn't know how to wash his hands and avoid killing himself with the bubonic plague, having rats running around spreading diseases, not even understanding the contextualization of bacteria? But you say they gave us the Bible. The European would have died if, when he landed in the West, if the native didn't show him how to counteract scurvy and cholera. Come on. They brought smallpox. They didn't bring information. Let's be honest. And so we get to the point of colonization. We get to the point where the African is interested in the muskets and in the shiny trinkets of the Westerner. And he decides that his religion, which he has at the time, the West African, is four dominant religion types at that time. Remember now, if we start, let's start slavery where it's supposed to. Let's start European slavery where it's supposed to. It doesn't start in 1619. It starts in the 1400s. First slaves, first attempt at Europeans to enslave African people starts in the 1400s. And so you're telling me now that in the 1400s, these people come over and they find what? They find Africans with bones in their noses, climbing in trees, swinging on vines like Tarzan? That's not our narrative. It's not what they found. What they found was they found people who had had Judaism for thousands of years. What they found is they found people who've had Christianity for almost 1,500 years. Remember, Christianity in the time of Columbus is well underway. They've had Islam for, hey, how are you? Good. They've had Islam for 600 years. So let's, when European colonization begins, Africa is not a third world country, third world place. Africa is the place. Africa is the place. Africa is the place to be. West, East, North Africa, these places are substantial nations. They are nation states. They have sovereigns. So we can't start recreating these things based on European 1950, 1960 movies. Africa is a civilized place. These people are coming there to trade with us. Okay? We are already Christians. Africans are Christians. Africans are Muslims. Africans are Jews when these Europeans came. And they had, I said, four types of religion, and they had ancestral religions too. Okay? So all these things are existing in the 1400s. That's why I'm saying history doesn't start from slavery. African history doesn't start when the European figures out how to build a boat that won't be destroyed by the waves. That's not when our history starts. That's maybe when his history starts, when his world conquest starts. Ours is long underway. Long underway. Solomon's empire has boats and ships that can be built. Right? Sea chart says we're already here. Absolutely. Abu Bakr the First built two armadas. Abu Bakr the First. Abu Bakr is the Mali king, the predecessor to Mansa Musa. Good morning to you, Black Panther X. He is the predecessor to Mansa Musa, the richest man known in modern time. But Abu Bakr he wants to circumnavigate the globe. He builds one armada. That armada is destroyed. The ships are too small. He builds one ship returns. He builds another armada bigger, and he circumnavigates the globe. West African trading is seen to South Africa, South America, Canada, and the United States, before these places are considered to be what the names I just mentioned are. Many are already there. Not just Mansa Musa. The Phoenicians circumnavigated the globe hundreds and hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus. They were shipbuilders. These people knew how to build boats. They knew how to sail through the stars. They understood the tidal systems. They knew which places to avoid. The waters have been charted. This is not new. Sailing is one of the oldest arts ever. So, Amber Rose again. By the time we get to the Middle Passage, Africans, the West African, let's use the West African. The West African, how many languages can he speak? If he's a Muslim, he has to speak Arabic. If he trades And this is let's say this is the 16th. I'll go 14th to 16th century. He must be able to speak Arabic. He must be able to speak some Latin language if he's to trade with Europeans. He has to have some kind of Latin dialect. Okay? He must also be able to speak English. So let's be very clear here. And he's going to speak his tribal languages. You're going to have West Africans who are not just Christians, Jews, Muslims, and also practicing maybe potentially some of their, I'd say, Aboriginal religions. You're going to have them who also are multi-dialect individuals, people who can speak one, if not more, of the European languages, people who can speak their religious language. If they're a Jew, they're going to have to be able to speak Hebrew, right? If they're a Christian, they're going to be understanding that Hebrew and Greek are part of their languages, and potentially even Latin. So when they collected these individuals via the contrition of African leaders, they didn't just roll in. Africa wasn't invaded. They didn't come in and shoot everybody up and say, okay, we're taking you guys hostage. They didn't do that. That's what they did to Israel with Nebuchadnezzar. This was not a military invasion. This was something that was allowed in some areas. Now, places like Congo, where these Belgians came in and tried to do evil and then sowed seeds of dissension and tried to give guns to multiple sides, that was coercion. So there's three ways they came in. They came in, that's through coercion. Let's destabilize them. Let's destabilize the nation. They came in through trade, right? Let's trade and see what we can do. And the last way they came in is they came in as missionaries. They came in as missionaries, all right? On behalf of our God. Some of them came like that too. Let's be honest about that too. But by the time the West African Middle Passage takes place, what we have in America is we have a very educated slave. A very educated slave. We're not mutes. We're not monkeys. We're an educated group of individuals from a rich history. Then what are we told? The first few generations are told, do not educate your slave. Well, you don't have to educate me. I can already, if you enslave me at 30 years of age, you got to educate me? 30 years of age, 20. I'm 15. Let's say you steal me from my Aboriginal home at 15. You got to educate me? Of course not. I can already talk. I already have multiple language skills. Of course you don't have to. All right? So what they say, well, you can't, we're not going to send them to formal schools. We're not going to educate our slaves. So, okay, so now I'm a 30, 35, 25, 15, 18-year-old man. They give me a wife, or I get a wife, and she's educated too, because she didn't just come out of her mother's belly mute forever. She's educated too. We have a child. I'm not going to teach that child something. I'm not going to try to pass on information to that child that cause them to be knowledgeable. The only thing they're not going to be educated on is the ways of this white man that has enslaved us. But I'm going to teach my child how to survive. I'm going to teach my child how to think. I'm going to teach my child how to understand. I'm going to teach my child anything that I think is good for him. And if I have multiple languages in my mind, I'm going to teach him every one of them. Let's not get confused. Getting to Amber now. Amber, your statement is erroneous. But the worst part is also true. So the worst part is also true. The black church now. This is a very hard thought. The black church doesn't receive anything. The black churches already exist from Africa to here. But the black church now, unfortunately, and this is my opinion, and you don't have to agree with me, assists in carrying water for our own oppression at times. The black church does that. It assists in carrying water for our own oppression at some times. And when the modern black church does it more than the churches of the 60s and the 70s. The modern black church does it. And this is how I say that and why I say that. And let's not confuse this. I believe Martin Luther King's nonviolent movement was an ideological approach from a Christian who had a pacifist perspective and felt that the power of God and love was stronger than the power of the gun, the weapon, the club. And he felt that in his pursuance of equality, that God would eventually rescue the Negro in America and open the eyes of whites to see that what they were doing was truly evil. And I think that was his premise. It's the premise of many today, and I have no issue with that. That's one perspective that somebody walks out in their faith. That's not what I mean when I say that I believe that the black church, to some extent, still carries water for white supremacy, for racial stigma and marginalization. This is how. The black church of modern day has ceased being the rich institution of the building of the black community, and has participated in being an institution that is the building of micro kingdoms for the men who stand behind pulpits. And in turning the black church from being an institution that speaks for all people, including the black voice, by making sure education and our leaders are the most educated and most astute and most profound individuals, we have allowed the lowest form of teacher, preacher, and pastor to become the voices of the church. Therefore, coonery, your capacity to sing, your ability to entertain, has become more valuable to the black church than your ability to think, to strategize, to create political partnerships, stakeholders. Some pastors truly believe that the church should not be political, and that's a grave mistake. The church has always been political. The Judeo-Christian religion has always been political. Religion is political. It must be. It is God speaking to us and causing us to speak to the world. The king, the queen, the president, the prime minister. Religion has always ordained whom God would put in charge. You couldn't have a Saul unless God gave a vision to Samuel. You couldn't have a David functioning properly unless God gave a vision to Nathan and said, check him. You couldn't have an Ahab without an Elijah. And so what we've always had is we've had a very close purview of what is taking place in politics and the ability to say, hey, you're going too far. What we have done in the black church is we have disrespected the legacy of the 60s. We have abandoned the marches on Birmingham and the bus boycotts. We have disassociated ourselves from sitting down and telling America through Malcolm and others the evils of your ways, and of teaching the black man to stand up and the black woman to stop shaking her behind on a pole, and trap culture has become the new culture, and the church has now become part of the culture as opposed to the church being separate from the culture and saying, "Come out of her, my people, be not a partaker of her sins and her plagues." But the church has put on a gold chain and its dancing shoes and a twisted hat and said, "Let's dance with you." And so the church is dancing with the devil as much as any sinner out there. And we have made sure that our leaders are not wise enough to be able to bring in the wise. How many men? There shouldn't be any homelessness in the church. Helps out the community. There should be hunger. That's not the job of the church. That's the job of government. There shouldn't be homelessness in America, period, because it's a G8 nation. And it has enough money to obliterate homelessness. The church doesn't get money from the state, so the church's job is not to deal with homelessness. See heart. The church's job is to deal with the destitution of the human heart. We don't create money. We don't create policy. Our money comes from the donations of our parishioners. It is the job of the state to obliterate homelessness. It's not the job of the church to obliterate homelessness. That would be impossible. We don't create money. The state prints money, creates policy, institutions. The state, there's no homelessness in Cuba. There's no Cubans are 100% literate, and there's no homelessness there. So how can that be the job of the church? It's not the church's job. It's the state's job to make sure its citizenship are not homeless. If they're mentally ill, put them in an institution. But there's you can't put that on the church's back. And unfortunately, we're far too transactional with the church. The church is told very easily, very quickly. When they come, they're begging Pete, when they're begging Peter and John, man begs him at the gates. It says, "Please have mercy on me." He goes, "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I have I freely give." And the power of God rushes out of them onto this man, and he's whole again. So that's not what the church is bringing to the table. We're not bringing money to the table because we don't have it. That's not our wealth repository. Our treasure is from heaven. Our treasure is the power of influence and the power of God activating in our tongues and the things that we say. It's in the collective organization of our people so that we can tell you what it is and what it's not. That's the church's job. Homelessness is not really the church's job, because after the first century, the church wasn't hiding and didn't have to settle in houses. And the Bible says actually they brought all money together so that they had all things in common. And so people sold property, sold homes to bring money to the church. The very first killing, per se, by the apostles was Ananias and Sapphira, who held back money that they were supposed to give the church because they lied. So no. Let's reverse that. The American church experience, unfortunately, has been inundated with this cash cow system. The church is about money. It's about money, and these pastors are asking for money because you have to. Why? If you create a palace on the backs of poor people who have given you their money because you're a very good convincer, you're a fundraiser, you got to keep it coming, baby. I got to keep these lights on, and so it's a cycle. Unfortunately, it's a terrible cycle. Every pastor wants a big building. Okay, great. You want a big building, you want a big church. Who's going to pay for that? You got to keep begging the same people who help you put the big building there. If you're smart, you use some of that money maybe, and you create something else. You create some kind of for-profit entity. But again, you're a businessman now. What's the church supposed to be? What's the church? So unfortunately, yeah, our hand is not on 100% the civil well-being of everyone. It is supposed to now direct policy. So the church should be able to say, hey, my constituency, we've got 30% individuals who don't own homes here in this area. We need roads. We need you to put affordable housing in here. We need to make sure there's proper water. We need to, Make sure there's proper schools. Our kids need a community center, and all these kind of things. The church is supposed to speak to policy, for sure. But it can't come out of the church because the church doesn't create anything. What is this product? What is the church selling? You know, these days they want to sell tapes and they want to sell, baked goods, but the church doesn't have a product. The product of the church is God. He is the only product that you're selling, like, really. And that product is free. So it's hard to put the church in a position where its job is to solve homelessness. It's very difficult. Amber's issue, if we go back to her, is that the church has now begun to speak with the voice of a dragon. Looks like a lamb, speaks like a dragon. And her perspective is that because it was given to us by a dragon, by white supremacy, and therefore if the church was given, if black people were given Christianity via white supremacy, there really isn't anything called a black church. It's not really a black church because it was given to you by white people. That's her perspective, and her perspective is wrong. Her perspective is off. But even though her perspective is wrong, what the church is producing looks like what she's saying. That's a problem. That's the issue. And so Amber Rose, as much as we can speak to the things that we must address in respect to character and morality, and all those other things, let's start with this. Church loves you. Church loves you, Amber Rose. The black church loves you. The black church needs you, but you need it. And it is not a black baby wrapped up in white supremacy. It is a black entity that has confused itself and sat down at the table of capitalism, and sat down at the table of deal making, racial oppression, and has forgotten itself. That's all. Church has to wake up. The water has to splash on our face, and we have to remember who we are. We have to remember who we are. Black church has great beginnings, strong beginnings. And if we remember who we are, we'll be okay. But Amber, the black church loves you. Your message is strong. What we're giving feels like you're right, but it's our problem to fix. It's our job to change how you feel about us. It's our job to show you something else. It's our job to teach you history. How many pastors don't know history? How many pastors, this last Sunday, I went to a church that said, oh, next Sunday is going to be Passover Sunday. We're going to practice Passover next Sunday. Now, not Passover Sunday, Pentecost Sunday. Last Sunday was Pentecostal Sunday. If you are Eastern, next Sunday is Pentecost Sunday. If you are Western, now, this Pentecostal pastor, what he should have said is that we have decided to practice Pentecost on the Western observance day, not on the Eastern observance day. But what he has done is he has abandoned a more African tradition, a more Eastern. When you say Eastern in the church, it means African. It means Alexandria. And he has embraced a Western tradition, which is still Rome, which is the Latin church. And again, if you want to cut it up, but it's very funny when you think about it, due to ignorance, that a Pentecostal is saying, I will follow the Roman Catholic tradition. I will follow the Roman Catholic tradition. Let's see what she said. Amber Rose is hitting the wall, and now she's speaking from her experience. Yeah, I think, and we have to not leave out the fact too, Seahart, that Amber Rose is a entertainer, and some of the things that are said from her are for shock value, and I can't put a lot of emphasis on something, of someone speaking who knows nothing about what she's talking about. It's not her fault that she knows nothing about it, because I'm not a heart surgeon, and therefore me speaking about the condition of the human heart is from a layman's perspective. I am a theologian, and so I can speak to this. And so I can't fight with her because she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's not the only thing that people really think that they should be able to just tell everybody about is God. Everybody has a PhD in God all of a sudden, right? Everybody got a PhD in God. Every single person I talk to. I'm not really a churchy person like that, but I have a great relationship with God. I'm not really a churchy person like that. I'm more spiritual. I'm not really like a Bible kind of person, but I talk to God and I know God. That's what everybody says. Everybody does that, right? Everybody's got a PhD in God. Can't tell them nothing about God. Oh, no. I know God. These pastors up there, they don't know God, but I know God. Everybody's like that. Everybody's got a PhD in God. You ask them some hard questions. You ask them things about, tell us about your perspective on sociology. What is your understanding of the concepts of oneness versus the economic and the ontological trinity? Can you explain that to me? Can you break that down and how you'd see that? Can you speak to me about the dichotomy of Christ? Do you see him in the fullness of the expressions of his humanity versus his divinity? Can you explain that? Like, people don't understand the faith, and people feel they don't have to. And maybe they're right. Maybe it's not their job to understand the faith. It's their job to follow it. But it is definitely the job of the pastor, the teacher, the theologian to say, I must be able to explain this faith in season and out of season. I have to be able to give an answer. That's what the Bible tells us. We must be able to give an answer via the Holy Spirit, and to study to show ourselves approved. All these things it is put in our is put it in before us and said, hey, this is your job to do these things. Go and do them. Go teach, preach, and baptize. Go spread this thing. Go engage the world with it. That's what we're supposed to do. Our churches have embraced the Roman Catholic customs and tradition. Many churches have embraced ancient traditions that they don't understand, Yvonne. So we have bishops now who are using Anglican dress. When it comes to being a bishop, they're using the Anglican clothes, right? And so they go from Anglican to Roman Catholic clothing when it comes to ancient dress. What they should have done is they should have designed their own clothes. That's all. That's all I'm saying. You can't say, I don't want to be a British citizen anymore. This is what America's been very good at. America did a couple of things. I don't want to be a British citizen. So what do you got to stop doing? Stop celebrating British holidays. That's why you just had Memorial Day, right? What is Memorial Day? Memorial Day is nothing. It doesn't exist. You know what Memorial Day is? Memorial Day is saying that the week before, which is Victoria Day, right, the celebration of Queen Victoria's birthday, that we will not observe that. We will observe something else. And we will observe Memorial Day because we will not observe that. Right? The American has been very clear. He even changes the way that he cuts food and his manners, his table manners, everything, to not be British, to change it. So the church now, when it comes time for the Pentecostal to say, I'm not Catholic, but when you want to be a bishop, you follow the rites of Catholicism, you put on their clothes. I'm not an Anglican, but when you want to be a bishop, you put on their clothes. Why don't you just create your own? That's all you have to do. All you have to do is have a little bit of imagination and say, you know what? We're going to design this. But instead, you allow the ancient church to come right back, the same thing that you said you're not, and you're copying them. And you don't even understand it. So this pastor, bishop, decided that he was going to adopt Pentecost Sunday next week. And it's fine. But he didn't even understand why. He says, oh, one of our elders explained it to me, and thank God for his good counsel. Well, explain it to us. Explain it to us. All right? What he should have said is that we are going to follow the Western calendar in respect to our rights, and it fits into our church calendar better. It's after Memorial Day, so you guys can. Basically, he said, so you guys can celebrate Memorial Day. This is what he said. This was his excuse. So we don't interrupt you eating your ribs and celebrate Memorial Day. We'll celebrate Pentecost next week. That was a very terrible answer. For me, that's not a good answer. You're basically saying that Pentecost, that your mindset that Pentecost is really today, but because it's a weekend where you want people to go out and have a good time and party and do their thing, you as a pastor are going to just decide arbitrarily to move a holy day? That was a very bad answer. He didn't answer that very well. Me sitting there as a member of his congregation, I would have been like, what are you saying right now? You're saying that we're supposed to have communion and celebrate Christ today, and you have moved it because people want a barbecue? I would have packed up my stuff and I would have taken my membership back right away. What he should have said is that next week is actually Pentecost. We're following the Eastern calendar, and therefore this is the calendar that we're going to use from now on. That's it. That would have been fine. I'd been like, oh, okay, no problem. Although it's still Roman Catholics calendar. I don't know why we're following the Roman Catholics, but okay. As opposed to saying, I just want to make sure you guys can, enjoy your food this week. We'll do Pentecost next week. We'll move it for you. That is the tail leading the head. Hi. Historians spoke of the day's people. We become very cynical. Yeah, I just explain that a little better so I understand exactly what you're saying. I think I know what you're saying. Enlighten, number one. I think I know what you're saying. But yeah, we have a very very cynical approach to our Christianity today. People are very cynical. People are extremely cynical, and but they have a right to be, because we've given them so much reasons to be cynical. Where have we gone? Where have we gone with this? Amber Rose, unfortunately, has a pulpit as loud as any pastor in America, right? We follow the Gregorian calendar in this world and society. You follow the Gregorian calendar, which is a solar calendar, Black Panther X, as opposed to the lunar calendar. But in respect to your liturgical calendars, now, those liturgical calendars are not based on, to some extent they are based on a solar calendar. So Easter is based on the spring equinox, things like that too, yes. But the liturgical calendars of the East and the West were split for other reasons too, because the Eastern and the Western Church have declared themselves, out of communion. So they wanted to separate those things too. And again, the church's problem is the church. That's the church's problem, is its own behavior to itself. So Pope Gregory's foolishness was based on, again, dissension between the ranks. Again, back to family. It's family business. So listen, Amber Rose. Let's get your history right, okay? We gave white people their religion. They didn't give it to us. We are the individuals who are the holders of the book. Abraham, black man; Isaac, black man; Jacob, black man; Moses, black man; David, black man; Solomon, black man, and the list continues. Jesus, black man; the apostles, black men for the most part. The list continues. The faith is black. It's a black faith. It's an Afro-Semitic faith. It's our faith. So you can't give black people back what is theirs. It's always been ours. The Bible is the black man's history book. The Bible is a black man's history book, period. You want to see your history, black man, use the Bible. Start with Genesis 10 and go on. All these people were people of ethnicity. The Greeks came in there. The Romans came in there. White people are there too. Absolutely. But the Bible is clearly the history book of black men. Okay. India, we didn't leave you out. Thomas, the Apostle Thomas, remember they called him Doubting Thomas? He wasn't Doubting Thomas, he was real Thomas. Thomas was real. He was just like, hey, bro, unless you show that to me, baby, I ain't gonna believe it. I know the man's dead. I seen his grave. I seen what they did to him. You can't tell me Jesus is alive unless I see him myself. I got to see him myself. I got to put my finger right in the holes in his belly. I ain't playing with you. Thomas was from Detroit. Thomas was. Thomas said, "Oh, my Lord and my God, it's you." And Thomas took the gospel to India. So he didn't leave y'all out either. In the lifetime of the Apostle Thomas, India got the gospel too. So he didn't leave y'all out. Nobody got left out. Asia got it. Asia got it. China was one of the fastest growing Christian communities in the world. Communism couldn't stop the Bible. Nothing has been able to stop it. And Amber Rose, that's what you should focus on. That if white people gave black people the Bible and gave black people Christianity, when they saw what Christianity could do for the black man, they would have tried to take it back. So Christianity was given to us by God. As I close, one day the Holy Ghost came on a one-eyed sharecropper named William J. Seymour, and the power of the Acts 2 church vested into that man and his followers, and God gave his presence back to the African American. Before he gave him the church back, the history, the rudiments, the most prehistoric faith and its instructions back, he said, I'm coming to give you me. And that's what the Pentecostal and charismatic movements has been about. It's been about individuals that say, I got God and I'm trying to figure it out. And white people never gave the black man the Holy Ghost. God had to do that himself, Amber Rose. Bless you. Bless everyone here. I've been here for an hour talking. Black Panther X, bless you, man. You know, but what you said wasn't 100% off. We are following a Gregorian calendar, but the liturgical calendars are what we gauge our dates on. So love you, everybody. Support the channel, man. Support the channel. Subscribe. Send this to somebody. Tag Amber Rose. Amber, love you. I'd love to pray with you. I'd love to talk to you about Black history. I'd love to talk to you about the history of the African or Semitic person in the Bible. I'd love to talk to you about the middle passage. I'd love to talk to you about the faith. God is with you, Amber Rose. And he's going to touch you and turn your life around and cause you to be an ambassador of his kingdom. In Jesus' name. Somebody say amen. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye. This is The Real Spiel.